Good old coffee. Get you through the day, right? So, I got a pretty cool video for you today. Hopefully, right? So, a lot of my videos, especially as of late, has not been getting many views, or literally my last video that I put out yesterday got 1 like. Shit, I was even thinking about going back to the video just to add an extra like to it. But I'm not that guy. But point is, people aren't really caring for my videos anymore, so we're gonna have to do something that's a little bit more extreme. All right. So a lot of my videos, the reason why you guys watch me is because I'm either controversial, or my conspiracy theories is not something that you've heard of before, or it's something rather in deep, like my hallucination videos or some stuff like that, right? And if my last video, which is rather important, talking about how you can maintain the most healthiest lifestyle for relationships, to better off your children, yourself, your significant other, where everyone is having a much better time, etc., right? Everyone's getting along. It's rather important to talk about that. And of course, when I make videos, it's the most simplest topic. Like, have respect in your relationships. If you went and asked 1 million people, should you have respect for your significant other? 99.9% of people will say yes, right? End of story. But this is the mind of Opex, and this is in-depth philosophy where I talk about things that you probably don't think about because no offense, you probably don't think that much. And actually, that's going to be a video coming soon. I have a few videos I want to talk about, but I'm going to throw this one ahead of the curve because this is something I've been thinking about, and you already know. Let's just dive into it. You already know how I feel about history. You already know how I feel about how they just make up shit, how like the winners of wars decide how the history books are written. It's whoever is literally more popular at a given time frame gets the credit. It's who markets the product becomes the inventor, right? So you know that this is just fucking fake. Your history books are fake. Now, there's something that I've been talking about before that I have never dove deep into outside of, okay, here's the evidence. This is obviously not true. Let's dive in deeper. Let's talk about our past, our deep, deep past, ancient past. Now, this is something that you've never probably heard from my channel before, my 300 videos. Who created the pyramids? Now, this is some shit that I've been thinking about for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, right? Because I didn't believe what they told us in school. Now, that's something that I've said in many of my videos. In school, I questioned my teachers, and I never, ever got any type of logic back or any type of individual, unique thought. It's always been by the book, curriculum. Now, if you're having that mindset of, well, I read this in school, and it made enough logic where I never questioned it, sure. Live your whole life not questioning things. That's what they're counting on. Now, I have said in my videos that, well, think about it like this. Someone's benefiting from stuff, right? Someone's benefiting from you being ignorant. This is stuff from the past. Now, why are they trying to hold out on stuff in the past? When you look at society, when you look at population rates, when you look at the amount of people that are in history, when you look at the mass migration, when you look at Native Americans being in America before the white man showed up or European showed up, that should tell you a lot about history. Like, think about it like this. If there are people already in America before we were here 500 years ago, and they had language, they had societies and tribes and stuff like that. They had a hierarchy. They had all the types of things that you would expect a tribe to go through. Now, tribes, albeit that it's not part of the modern civilization, it's not part of downtowns, it's not part of the matrix that we're in, But think about the tribes. Tribes have history. Tribes have where they went from, where they came from. They have a lineage. They have a hierarchy. They have stories. They have what they've called their rivers and, whatever, right? They've invented new tools. They've done these things, right? Now, why is it that we believe that because we don't understand the ancient languages that they didn't have history? Why is it? Why is it that until it was of Latin terms, or something that is produced in the Latin languages, English, French, Spanish, Italian, if it's not in those four languages, if it's not in modern Russian or Slavic languages, if it's not in modern Chinese, if it's not Mandarin or whatever, that it could have been that substantial to even talk about. But if they had languages, they've had written languages, they've had history, right? Think about it like this. Even as small as a cow, which is actually pretty big, but a cow in their level of consciousness, they have history, especially when humans have been involved with cows, putting rings around their noses so they can bring them places easier because they don't rebel, or whatever, right? The way that we have treated cows and caged them for thousands of years have altered their history, right? Now they have history. Now think of humans, early humans, whatever you want to call them, early civilizations, right? Because tribes are civilizations. Tribes are just in a smaller realm. Everyone knows each other, and it's actually much more healthy for the individuals, both healthy for their soul, their mind, their body. Anyways, so everyone has history. Why don't we talk about that history? Why is it that we have preconceived ideas, or rather, what we are taught in school is just that? For example, and this is going to get deep as we get farther along. This is just a way that I can easily spring this out on you. This is going to get real deep, guys. So, if I just forgot the group that went over. So there's a group that was, I guess, looks like the Native Americans to some standards, right? That came from South Russia, Southeast Russia. I forgot what the groups are. And I know it's not the Mongols. Is it the Mongols? I don't even know what the Mongols are from Mongolia. I don't know. I need to look at a map or something. I forgot who in history, because I tend to just, when people talk about history, I just zoom out. I just think about something that of actual substance. But anyways, let's just say it's the Mongols, because that's who I'm thinking it is. Mongols go up all the way through Russia on a, 3,000 mile journey? Whatever, just to get to northern Russia, just to get to that land bridge. 3,000 miles. Then they go across that land bridge into Alaska, which had to go across a ocean. Had to, what did they have to do? They had to go around Alaska to go down south to get to finally some food and something, right? And water, and get away from the cold, right? And this was apparently happened during an ice age, right? This is what you're told. So some groups of people went 3,000 miles up into where it's only Arctic, right? In the Ice Age period, this is only Arctic, right? Just use your head, come on. 3,000 miles, which, think about it, how long does it take you to walk 3,000 miles? Let's say a month. It would be more like 2 months because you'd be sleeping half the time. How tired would your legs be? Now you got women and children too? Come on. How tired would your legs be? Where's your food coming from? Are you carrying all your food, which is going to freeze and be uneatable anyways, or unedible? Because, once you're in an ice age scenario, how are you going to thaw that shit? You're going to use fire? Where are you going to get the wood from? How are you going to create a fire? Like, this seems next to impossible. Why would they make this journey? So they're up in the Ice Age area where it's just ice. There's no food, nothing's growing, no food. It's by far below zero. So they needed to really strap on some animal stuff. How are they going to go through, I don't know how much ice and snow, let's just say 100 feet of ice and snow. So they're trekking through this shit. Now there's mountains and shit too. So of course, some avalanches and the idea of it just going to the land bridge from the ocean, which it had to be that cold to freeze salt water. Come on, start using your head, and then take that all the way down till we finally found food 8 months later. If you went full speed that whole time without food, without water, come on, just come on. Use your head, use your logic. Impossible, right? We can pretty much say at least next to impossible. So how did people show up in America? Before America was America. How was the natives here? How was the natives already down in Peru, down in Guatemala, down in Brazil? How was that even a thing? How did they have ancient structures that use high levels of mathematics in order to make sure that that structure was sustainable for long periods of time? Same thing with the pyramids. Let's go back to the pyramids. How did they make those structures? Now, it's quite obvious that it's been more than 7,000 years before those pyramids were built. So let's just say what my thought is, right? I've not been to the Great Pyramids. I have not been there. I have not taken samples. I have not done my own empirical studies or my empirical experiments. I have not done that. However, using logic and stuff, I've come to the conclusion, and I don't want to dive into all of that shit because I'm not even getting to the point here. Because again, I'm leading you up to some shit. Pyramids were probably made between 20 and 50,000 years ago. Yep, I said it. 20 to 50,000 years ago, not 7,000 years ago. Now, I can go through why I believe that all day long. I'll just give you one quick point. Let's just say it was redone 7,000 years ago. It was done way before it was even a desert. Straight up. And there's a lot of evidence for that. Corrosion, stuff that would obviously entail flooding, stuff like that, which would affect the pyramids, the Sphinx, etc., which did not exist as when that area, that terrain became a desert. Right? Come on, logic here, right? So you have to go back to when the Garden of Eden, let's just say, or back when Egypt was a jungle, right? That was a long time ago. And there's a lot of evidence proving that was a long time ago. 20 to 50,000 years ago was around the time when that was a thing, when that was a jungle, when that was, they had monsoons there, right? That was back when, before the Ice Age, right? So come on, before it was a desert. We can all agree on that. At least do your research and understand what these structures have went through. And it's more than just sand corrosion. You can tell it was water corrosion as well. Or erosion. Water erosion. Now, because it was so far long ago, how did they make that structure? Now, we can think about different types of aspects. We can do the ancient alien theory, which I think is the most absurd one, but possible, right? Definitely possible. Where aliens came here and then either created us on the ship over, or took us from another planet, took our DNA, or just created us like it says in the Bible. You know, like they created man and all these animals and stuff through different DNA structures or different types of technology in order to encompass. Maybe they had a super type computer or super technology where they pressed a button and said, hey, let's create this being, and then create it, right? which sounds absurd, right, to me. Possible, very possible. It's just outside of our range right now. Now, are we getting into cloning humans and stuff like that? Yeah, you can clone humans in South Korea. They're doing it. And I think China's doing it as well. Don't quote me on that one. I know South Korea is cloning humans. So they are able to take different types of manipulations through the cell, through mitochondria and stuff like that, in which they can create a clone or a double. So they could have just done it to themselves and then been like, here's that. Now let's manipulate this. We already know about genetic engineering. How long ago was genetic engineering really going on? If you actually look at the pyramids and you look at ancient Egypt and different types of structures and obelisks, well, what do you see? You see half birds, half humans, half ants, half whatever else, like, look at the Sphinx, right? The Sphinx was supposedly, before they redid it, a lion head, right? And then they carved it down so much to make it look like a human. So it was something that was altered. That was something that was changed 7,000 years ago. Because before then, which obviously if you look at the Sphinx now, and then they redid it like 100 or 200 years ago or whatever again, the erosion was sand erosion, which is entirely different than the erosion on the rest of the Sphinx. Because the rest of the Sphinx had water erosion. When was the last time it flooded in the desert? Come on. And I don't mean just a light flood. I mean thousands of years of heavy rain, which would be identical to what you would see in the Amazon. Right? Come on. Now, the evidence is quite simple. There's technology that was around that long ago. To my speculation, or rather somebody that can use the evidence and put it into perspective outside of what you are taught, which is philosophy. You question things, you try to get to the bottom of things using science and evidence, and then you put your own reasoning behind it when you start connecting dots. 20 to 50,000 years ago they had this technology, which is probably, a lot of people speculate, better than the modern technology. Like, we could not create a structure that big that could last that long with that precision, etc., right? And to move those tons the way that they have. Like, we don't have fucking much. I mean, we can use a wrecking ball and destroy those structures and it would take forever, but we can't create those structures, right? So the question is, how did they get that technology? And who was it? Now, again, going back to the ancient alien crap, they speculate that the aliens had all the technology. And if you ever watched a show of ancient aliens or any type of hypothesis or theory of the ancient aliens, you know that they love to talk about the pyramids. How did it get there? Well, we didn't have that technology, so somebody had to, and it must have came from another world because we don't have this technology here. Well, here's the thing about technology. You have the technology, and it's right here. We just don't know it. So what happened to the know it? In order to get technology, in order to invent something, whether that be anything from the light bulb to a supercomputer, to a rocket going to Mars, to the Mars rover, to whatever, right? We had the materials. We have the technology, but you need a mind to orchestrate that technology. One or a combined level of minds saying that, hey, I'm great at this aspect, I'm great at this aspect, I can do this. I mean, like, just even think about a business, right? I'm a truck driver. I'm the truck driver. I need a dispatcher. I need a fuel stop. I need somebody heading the whole thing. I need somebody to pick up loads. You know, it's a huge, like, everyone has their job. Trucking can happen by one person, but in order to make it much bigger, like even to create this truck, it was a much better example than me trucking. To create this truck, how many minds had to wrap around different aspects of making this truck to make it complete? Well, one had to figure out how to make an engine. One had to, there's a million people that had to be involved in order to make this truck. We can all agree on that without me wasting 10 minutes describing how that works. So, the pyramids, in the ancient aliens theory, is that aliens had to come down and come up with some sort of technology, or had some type of technology, to create pyramids. And again, we can talk about the reasonings why behind that a million different ways, but that's a theory. That's a real theory that a lot of people speculate. And it's rather important to figure out that, who created this technology, like pyramids. Now, we know that the ancients were very smart, right? A lot of people want to say, oh, they had primitive technology, they just used bows and they had tiny arrowheads and they barely were able to use hammers, or they created saws and stuff like that. Like, those were ancients, We're way past that now. Sure. But what was way before that? That's what I want to ask. That's the question. What was it before those arrowheads, before those cave drawings, before all that shit? Now, science has predicted, I would say predicted, or theorized, that human brains doubled in size pretty much overnight, about 100,000 years ago, 120,000, whatever, right? So they theorized that we had some sort of missing link 100,000 years ago, right? Not when we were during the Ice Age, right? Not 10,000 years ago, where we just started getting actual history, right? Not then. Before then, we had brains the same size as now. Nothing has changed. Technology has fluctuated. So what has happened? Just think about it right now. 100 years. Last 100 years, we went from steamboats to cars, to different types of technology, to planes, to all the things that happened 100 years ago, right? All new technology that we are using today, and we expanded on that technology today. Now technology is all a part of our life. We have something called the web, the internet, in which stores information via what? Anything. Or at least it's transferred and transmitted through the air, right? We have technology that is so vast right now, we can go to Mars, right? What happened in the last 100 years? Now think about it. Let's just say 100,000 years ago, everyone on this planet all of a sudden got double-sized of brains. I don't know how that happened, and they don't want to tell you either, even though I think it's rather simple, but we could theorize many different theories as well. So, what happened from 100,000 years ago to, we'll go with 7,000 years ago, because that's generally when history started becoming becoming in your history books today. About 7,000 years ago to now is about your history, right? Everything else is guessing and saying, well, between, now, like I just said, 100 years, a lot happened, right? If you were to read about major things that have happened in the last 100 years, it would take you more than your lifetime to read it all. Just in the last 100 years. Come on. Now, if you want to say that basically every 100 years could potentially be like that as well, then we're onto something. Then we are speaking logic. But to say nothing happened from 7,000 years ago to 100,000 years ago, they were just using tools, just trying to survive. They were hiding, the white people were hiding in caves. The darker people were out in the sun, basking in the sun, trying to hunt some food. This makes sense only if you want to believe it. Now, don't get me wrong. When we came here, we saw tribes. Tribes was for sure a thing. But here's my thought process behind it. Tribes was something that was between times. Between times. I believe the Illuminati, the elites, have been around for thousands of years. Thousands. If you've seen the infrastructure, how things have changed over the years, now you can say whatever you want about this theory, that's fine. This is just the conclusion I've been on. When you look at the trajectory or the hiding of information or which stories are told and which are not, which books were burned, which structures were destroyed, which clay tablets were destroyed, which ones were kept. Languages have changed, right? That's a big one. Let's talk about that. What languages have been around the last 7,000 years? The ones I've talked about. The Mandarin Chinese, the Japanese, the, I don't know, the Tibet language, the Indian language, the four Latin languages, the Slavic, Russian languages. These languages have become more mainstream. This is what everyone has to learn, these types of languages. Now, of course, there's Icelandic languages. There's tons and tons and tons of languages. If I went on a Google search right now, Google couldn't even be accurate of how many languages have been ever around, let alone what's even today's standards of what's a language and what's a different language. I mean, just Spanish and Italian are pretty similar languages. However, it's a completely different languages. Completely different. Now, what has changed and what has sparked different languages? Was it because everyone was in a tribe and they were against the other tribe? They didn't want other tribes to know what they're talking about? That people just were smart enough to start their own tribe and civilization? Could be. Could be. It works great if you're a Christian or a Muslim. Those ideas make sense because they work with your written books. Great idea. It falls in line with what your belief was from reading the books. So, languages have been around for easily 100,000 years. Easily. Once your brain size doubled, you have a form of language. Watch my previous video when I talk about language. There's many ways to derive language. You can do sign language. Like if I said, if I did something with my hands to describe something, like this gave a gesture of how I felt and how I'm trying to interpret things, right? This is a simple gesture that is well understood between everyone. People that have sign language as their only form of language, or spoken language, which isn't spoken, or any spoken language for that matter. People still know what this is, right? If I went like this about to fight you, right? Something's going to trigger in your head, even if you've never seen somebody fight with fisticuffs, right? You still know that somebody's angry and about to fuck you up with their bones, which is your knuckles, or elbows, or knees, right? You fuck someone up with your bones. And as much as that's universal and everyone knows that, there was languages that have derived from that. So did everyone start their own spoken language? Or was there more of a spoken language that was universal that has changed and was eradicated? Right? So we have hieroglyphics. Right? We have hieroglyphics, we have cuneiform, and those are like the two main forms of language that no one understands. But clearly it's something from the ancient past. Now what happened where these languages were destroyed, their books were destroyed, and very, very, very few, if any, remnants of these languages ever made it to 2018. What happened? Well, we know that there's been book burnings, right? We know for a fact that there were structural burnings. Like when the Spanish Armada, or I said Armada, but that's not what I'm talking about, the Spanish Army or the Spanish Conquistadors. I don't know how to pronounce that right now, I'm dumb. Spanish came to South America, saw Guatemala, saw Peru, saw Brazil, saw these areas, and wanted to take it over. But there was people there. Just like what the English did to the United States, and just like the French did to Canada. All right? So the Spaniards came to South America, and it's well known, and it makes sense in history, that they destroyed all of their written languages. They conquered the people down there. They destroyed all their architecture, their architecture, their everything that they've ever created in their society and their civilization and their culture. They destroyed it all and forced them to speak Spanish. Right? They raped their children. Or their children. They did, but not everyone, but they raped their women and had different types of offspring. They hung their men. They killed their men, the majority of them, and they raped their women. Right? We know this. This is very simple to see nowadays. Duh, they speak Spanish. Duh, all of their culture's been destroyed. There's none left except for very, very few remnants like ziggurats and stuff like that you see. But very, very few. And no one can speak those languages that they spoke back then. No one. So, how did they go from having their own type of culture, their own language, their own religion, their own everything, right? Their own civilization, to being destroyed, to becoming speaking Spanish, to lose their culture, and to become Christians? What changed? Well, it was forced on them. Why? Because they want to take over. How were they going to take over if they still had a culture? They still had their men. They still were fighting for their culture. Well, they wanted to stop that immediately because they want to take over. Pretty simple. Shouldn't be laughing, but it's pretty simple. And I shouldn't have to explain that. Now, we know, because of what I said in the beginning of the video, how the fuck did people get down there? Through the Ice Age. It didn't happen. It's fucking ridiculous. You gotta be an absurd amount of stupid to think that they made it down to fucking Brazil, through Russia, through that land bridge, the Bering Strait, through Alaska, made it all the way down after 10,000 years. Now, it makes sense because it's 10,000 years. They could have done it. Sure, they could have. Come on, why would they go through an, what is that, 14,000 mile journey or something to Brazil? Now, of course, that didn't happen in one generation. I get that, right? But 14,000 miles during an ice age where there's no food, there's no vegetation, There's no animals. Nothing can live in that environment. Gonna fight off polar bears. It just doesn't make sense. You can't drink the water. It doesn't make sense. And the water's all frozen, so you're gonna have to put ice and snow into a pot that you've been dragging from fucking Russia, which was basically, a mile or two of fucking ice. Like, doesn't make sense. So how were they put there? I don't really know. But it tells me that language, tribes, people, civilization, religion has been around for much longer than 10,000 years. Much longer than 10,000 years. I'm talking probably whenever our brain size doubled. Whatever miraculous thing happened during that period created technology, created things that were great, created freedoms, created different types of civilizations, different levels of consciousness. Now, there are theories out there that once upon a time, of course, when you just look at those pyramids again, what created that technology 50,000 years ago? What created that technology? Intelligent minds. Could have these intelligent minds not have been human? Yeah, obviously. Could it have been human? Yeah, obviously. Could it have been humans from another planet that arrived here, that already had all types of technology? That's where my mind goes. The reason for is because we have evidence of humans. And we have evidence of technology that we don't have now. That was the information behind this technology has been destroyed. All the written languages destroyed. They even changed the Sphinx, its head. They carved out something new. About 7,000 years ago. Why? The things that were in the pyramids, they took out. Why? Oh, there was robbers and thieves. Sure. But if there was something that important in there, wouldn't you guard it? Shit, you guard royalty now. Shit, you guard gold now. Shit, you guard worthless paper that you claim is backed by gold, which it isn't. Which gold really isn't of value either, if you really wake up. Watch my video, why you shouldn't buy gold. I believe they had technology that created the pyramids. I'm more apt to believe, now this is still a theory to me, I'm believing this stuff, it's not like something I know is fact. I'm just using evidence, and this is as much evidence that has brought me to this point. I think that humans came from another planet. Since I was a very, very young boy, I've always thought that we came from Mars. And I'm being serious on that. I used to have dreams of us coming from Mars. Then we actually go to Mars and have footage of Mars. Now, again, I'm a conspiracy nut, so I don't entirely believe those footages are from Mars or the moon or whatever, right? I'm not entirely convinced because A, I have not been there and I can't prove it. So they can send me a picture from fucking the Sahara Desert as much as they want. It doesn't convince me just because they put a red filter on it. Right? It doesn't convince me. Now, could it be true? Sure. But my thought process since many dreams as a child has always been that we came from Mars and we had technology from Mars and we had to destroy the life forms on this planet. Again, I'm going to drive you nuts on this theory because it's a theory. I don't believe it to be true. It's my theory, and I actually wanted to create a movie on this idea. I actually truly wanted to make a movie on this, but I'm letting you guys know about this before I somehow get $1 million to make a good movie. But anyways, came from Mars. Mars was destroyed by war, famine, whatever, right? Solar flare, could be anything, right? Could be anything, right? There's proof of radiation on Mars that they have gathered through soil samples. There's proof of radiation. Now, that could be just the sun's radiation because of a small atmosphere after thousands of years, but it shows us that at once upon a time there was an atmosphere there. There was life there. How do you get an atmosphere? Well, there's one way. There's only one way. At least that we know of. Or at least that works on Earth. What is that one thing? It's a combination of two things. Organic recycling. This would be oxygen, carbon monoxide. Or no, carbon dioxide. I always forget that. Which one is it? Which one's the ones that plants breathe out? We breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide or monoxide. One of those two, right? We breathe it out, and then the plants recycle it, and then it becomes recycled, and it creates an atmosphere, right? Of organic material siphoning or recycling these things. Humans are nitrogen, right? Your cells are nitrogen. All the different things that you see on that periodic table. Your water, right? H2O goes up, comes back down with the clouds. It's a perfect fucking equilibrium here. Now, could it have been that way on Mars? Sure. Now, I'm just saying that this is a theory that I've always thought of. I don't believe it to be true. I gotta keep saying it before you guys say I'm fucking crazy. I just tend to think about shit a little bit more than the average person. Now, think about it. If we had all the technology go from Mars to Earth, as humans, could have we, and whether it was humans or not, the civilization on Mars coming to Earth, and no, I'm losing a lot of you on this one, all that technology that they've had, they could have wiped out the dinosaurs, or at least to the best of their ability, because there are plenty of stories right here on Earth of some leftovers, right? In caves, and there's, in Ancient Aliens talk about this too. Or those type of theorists that love to talk about this discussion, which I do as well. They love to talk about different types of scenarios, of the Loch Ness Monster to, what they found in caves that look like, raptors, velociraptors. And the great thing about it is that all of that evidence, which is research evidence, right? It's somebody writing something down and you reading it. It's the lowest form of evidence. However, it's enough evidence where when you put things together, it starts making sense. And just because it makes sense doesn't mean it's true. But this is why it's called a theory. So my theory is we came to Earth, whether it's us or something that created us, and started fucking around, killing dinosaurs, whether that be a nuclear blast or whether that be something that they've done, just going around in a UFO looking flying disc, just zapping fucking things. Oh, that T-Rex? Yeah, we ain't gonna fucking live here if that thing's there. Kill it.
Turn right on I-40 Business Loop.
I-40 Business Loop. Hold on, guys. This is going to be a long video, but I expected it to be. But at least we made it to the parts of more entertainment. Again, theory. So, think of it like this. If the life forms...
US 54.
I am driving a truck, guys, so realize I'm trying to do that on top of this. Alright, so think of it like this. We came from Mars, we went to Earth, we destroyed the dinosaurs, and then we tried to reconstruct life, create civilizations. We had massive amounts of consciousness and civilizations and technology, and we brought our family here because we knew that Mars was going to be destroyed, or the elite at the time on that planet came to Earth, destroyed Mars, and because they didn't want competition or anyone coming to Earth, somehow or another came to Earth, right? And Mars was destroyed somehow or another, right? And when that is happening, you got to understand the idea behind it all is that we had tons of consciousness, tons of technology, tons of understanding of how physics works, or we had tons of knowledge, right? Whether it was the same knowledge that we have now or greater. And we created structures. We created pyramids, maybe tons of pyramids, and only a few were left over, which is sort of proof that, when the Europes went to North America.
In 1/2 mile, turn left on US 54.
Sorry guys, I know this is going to be a long video. I just had to take a phone call from my dispatcher, so apologize for that. Hopefully I can remember right where we left off. So, if we were to think that everyone that was on planet Earth back in the day, thousands of years ago, before written history, we'll call it, well, they had to have history too. And do you really believe that they didn't have any proof of history other than arrowheads and shit like that? And cuneiform, which they claim was only like 10,000 years ago? Which, again, I think is a lot farther back than that. Why is it that every time there's anything from the ancient past, it is destroyed? Why is it? And a lot of it after, about the 400 AD? Around 400 AD and onward, everything was burned or destroyed by the Catholic Church, right? Now, we know that because there's history of it. Anything ancient or anything out of the norm or out of the uniform way to do things, or where the culture was directed into that form, was changed or destroyed or ridiculed or ostracized or whatever, right? It was casted out. So let's say even witches in Salem, right? The Salem witch trials, right? Why were they burning witches? Was it literally because it went against the Catholic belief? Perhaps. Because that's how they can get the people involved to be okay with destroying culture, because they just deem it to be evil. Were those witches necessarily doing anything evil? No, but that's what they believed. They believed it was evil because it was against their religion. And the people that created that religion, which, again, I don't understand how somebody can believe a religion that only existed 1,000 years ago. Humans have been around for 100,000 years, at least, for what we know, or at least on this planet, right? So why were things destroyed? Because they wanted to create a new world order. This is why my thought for the last decade was that the Illuminati, or the people who run the world, the families, the ones who don't have to work and then you do all their slave work for them because you just believe your history books, you're indoctrinated, you are believing your religion, which creates a good person, obedient slave to the oligarchy or the hierarchy or whatever. An obedient slave to the matrix system in which that they have created. And it took them thousands of years to create this system that is so perfect that we are going to work slave labor for... We just take one of these out, or one of those, because we have been told that is valuable. They have created such a perfect system in which we take this money for exchange of our hard-earned time, in which is very limited. The money that they print is unlimited. It is worth nothing. They have created a system where they made you believe that this is how you go through life. They made you believe that you should be a slave for something that is going to give you possessions. That's all it's going to do. Because once you pay for your house, that should be it, right? Nope. They've created a system that they have to charge you property tax every year, which forces you to have to make money every year, or else you go to jail. They have created this matrix in which they have you by the balls. Do you think this just happened overnight? Do you think this just happened just in the last 100 years? Since the Federal Reserve became a thing? No. This is something that has been perfected over and over and over again, getting better and better and better, having you fight their wars. They have complete dominance over you. 1,000 years ago, you knew who the hierarchy was. Nowadays, you don't. You just see the figureheads. Right? They knew the Rothschilds were the biggest family in the world. Nowadays, you don't even know who the Rothschilds are. And that's one of the most spoken elite names, is the Rothschilds, because they got you by the balls. They got you on the banking scheme, which I'm going to talk about in a video in the future, which I keep saying I'm going to make that video and I forget, because it's more of a lame video for me. I just tell you the process of how it works and the philosophy behind it, which is something that needs to be said anyways, because I've pretty much talked about everything else in that matrix outside of the banking scheme, which there's a lot more to that matrix, which I'm even saying in this video, right? There is a scheme that's been orchestrated thousands and thousands of years. Before it was shackles and chains, before it was imprisonment if you don't do what they say, before it was, then it became tax. They'll tax something of yours, which makes you subservient. They created religion, which was the original government on planet Earth. The original government of planet Earth was religion. All right, this made you an obedient slave. Now, I'm 100% for morals, right? It makes us all happier, it makes us all better. Violence is not the answer. The more positive you are, the more intelligent you are, right? The less abusive, the less violence, which we all know that's destructive. But they use that in religion to control you. They say, instead of you having a conscience, you do it because you do the right thing because I said it and we can put you into heaven. Or I'm God's chosen person, so you got to do what I say. Or whatever, right? It could be the Pope, it could be an emperor, whatever, right? But it was all under the church, or a religion, in which that they incorporated a state. Then they created a state only, because they had a separation of church and state not too long ago. Now they've created such a perfect slave-like society that everyone's involved. Everyone, not just, and they did this before. They proved it to be worthy for them just in religion. But they created it perfect with the state. Because now you're not worried about your soul and what happens after. You're worried about now. You're worried about, if I do this, I'm going to go to prison for life. They have prison for life. For life! You only live once! And they have prison for life? Oh, that's going to make you fucking do what they say. Like, you'll go for prison for life if you think there's an afterlife for eternity, right? But if you think you're going to spend your only existence in a cell, you're going to be a good person. They have perfected every fucking aspect of creating you to be a slave and to work for them for free, because they're printing that money out for free. And they're giving it to you to do their bidding because you think it's worth something. They've convinced everyone. And if everyone's involved in the Matrix, you're all going to believe it. So this has been orchestrated for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So this hierarchy that made it to the top, that perhaps could have been at the top the whole time or been overthrown or whatever, right? From when they perhaps came from Mars or wherever. But whatever happened where 100,000 years ago people became smart could have been coming from Mars. Could have been, well, we see this creature here on Earth and it's very smart, but it's definitely not as strong as or intelligent enough to create a society or a nice working race. And of course that whole Anunnaki theory could be a thing, you know, could be in play. Planet X, which, don't get me started on those idiots that believe that shit. But let's just throw it in there as well into the mix. Imagine if humans were created to be a slave race. Smart enough to do what needs to be done, have hands to use tools, and to create a perfect slave race. That's what we are. Look at us. You think we're the perfect free race, which is perhaps true as well. We're still the best in terms of freedom, in terms of our capabilities with freedom, in terms of consciousness, in terms of knowledge, and being able to understand things and to problem solve. But we can also use those things to be slaves. We have a conscience in which is so much easier to control than other animals. Now we can control dogs and stuff like that through conscience. Show that a dog, it's wrong to beat up, to chew up and kill another dog. But naturally, they're not that way. They've done something to our genes. They have done something to our brain. They have done something to our aggression, in which they have been able to tame us the way that we have been able to tame cows. To breed cows to be dumb, docile. They have created us to be smart and docile. As George Carlin says, smart enough to operate the machines and do the paperwork, dumb enough to passively accept the work. For that wage or whatever, right? Gotta drink the coffee before it gets too cold. Anyways, if humans were the slave race and were able to be controlled, it makes sense. And I don't believe that shit mining gold shit, because really, there's really no uses of gold that are that good. I mean, yeah, there are uses of gold. Don't get me wrong. One of the best conductors on the planet. There's many different uses, right? You can mold it easily. It looks appealing. Like, there's millions of uses for gold, especially when you get into technology. So, you think they did it just to mine gold? Created the slave race? No. I think they've created a slave race for many reasons. And whether that slave race was, you know, the reason why the brains doubled in size all of a sudden is because they took genetics from the creatures that were here. They added their genetics, you know, the image of God. You know, they added their genetics into what was here, which was a Neanderthal or whatever, right? Which is possible, right? I'm just theorizing here because I don't believe like 100% in this. I don't think any of this is true, but it's logically sound and consistent with the evidence. That's why I'm using this type of reason and logic behind this, because there's evidence for this. The other evidence just doesn't make sense. However, at least try to make sense out of this stuff, right? So I believe once upon a time we had tons of technology, perhaps more than we have now. Tons of technology, and it was destroyed. whether we use slaves to create structures and stuff like that, to create civilizations, to create different languages, written languages, or if that even existed before and it was taught to us, or if it existed before and it was brought as us to Earth. But there's clearly a catastrophe that happened that wiped out the dinosaurs. It could have been aliens. It could have been us. It could have been a variety of different things. It could have been us, that we created us through genetics. We created mammals, in which when they destroyed the world, right? They destroyed the world, and all was left was crocodiles and toads and fishes and reptilians and, you know, reptilian fish, stuff like that. Some birds existed still because they were on top of the mountains or whatever, right? Some things existed after that. You know, even stories of dinosaurs still existing, or dragons that were still existing on this planet. And there's evidence of it more than just what you see the Chinese culture loving dragons. You see the bones and the fossils. They have existed. And we know that they have existed, and we know that they existed on Earth. And something had to kill them all off. And what we see on Earth is animals adapt. But there's also animals that survive through it. So something had to be specifically targeting these animals. Because, hey, if oxygen in the air was greatly reduced during a time period, well, you will learn to adapt to that. Right? There are going to be animals that will survive through that, and then after that cataclysm or whatever it is, they will thrive again. Right? It could be radiation, it could be a solar flare, it could be 1,000 different things, right? That wiped out everything, and only the things that stayed in the water survived, right? Like alligators or fish could have still survived, you know, because if a solar flare hits, it's not going to boil up all of the ocean, right? It's not going to do that, right? I mean, it could maybe, who knows, right? But we know that things survived. So we're just going to take the evidence for what it is. And then they perhaps repopulated Earth. Well, we're going to need animals, and we're going to need an ecosystem, and we understand how things work because we are intelligent, highly conscious beings. And they split things, they probably brought things from Mars or wherever, right? They might have even created things from the things that were here. They're like, okay, we like that, and we like this from us. We like hooves on these animals. We like this, that, and the third, right? We like lions. We like all the things. The lions will keep that gazelle pack in check. The gazelles will eat the grass. Maybe we had to create grass. I don't know, right? Maybe we had to create new trees and ways to promote the atmosphere, you know? We had to have fruit for different types of life forms, whatever, right? And it's very possible that this might have been what happened. Again, I'm not saying, and I hate having to repeat myself, I'm not saying that this is fact, what I'm saying. I'm just theorizing. So, could it be that the powers that be, for thousands of years, wanted to enslave everybody, and people were getting too smart? Maybe people were rebelling. Maybe people overthrew them at one point, or whatever, right? And they wanted to destroy all the technology, whether it came from Mars, and I love saying Mars because that's where my brain goes. Mars might have had the technology and the written languages and all that shit that was destroyed by people instead of the elite. Could have been the elite destroying it from the people to dumb down people. We have evidence nowadays that they're using fake history to cloud their brain and to create a perfect slave through indoctrination. We know this. There's evidence of it. They're trying to dumb you down. They're trying to silence any information that is logical. And they're going to keep the bullshit out there like the ancient alien theory. They're going to keep that shit out there to cloud your mind with stupid shit. But they'll silence someone like me that's bringing some evidence forward and then some reasoning and hypothesis and theories behind it. It's the same thing that they destroyed the culture and the language and all that shit from the people that were just in South America, North America, before the Spanish and Italians came over and all them people, right? The English, before they came over. There was a culture, religion, and all those things here. And we destroyed it all. We destroyed it all. The cultures that were in Egypt and, all different types of cultures in the world. We have evidence that they have all been destroyed. Everything over like 3,000 years ago, generally. There are remnants of 7,000 years ago and stuff like that, which would be the cuneiform tablets or the hieroglyphics. These things were not destroyed completely. So we know that there's an active, they're actively destroying everything of real history. And then they have changed your language to English, for example. They have changed your language so you can't read the tablets. You can't find any evidence of the true past. That's why they are doing this. They want you dumb enough to believe their timeline, their science. This happened millions of years ago with the dinosaurs, and this happened, and then we came out of the caves, and then we started getting berries and started hunting, and then... Is that the timeline? No! That is not the timeline. That's what they want you to believe happened. Evolution. Evolution happened. But we have not changed in over 100,000 years. And instantly, our brains doubled in size. And you can see it in the fossil records. Instantly. A new human was born. Our modern day humans. You think you're smart? They were the same fucking smart 100,000 years ago. You think you're smart? The same smart 100,000 years ago. They weren't just figuring out cave shit. They were smart. Do me a favor. Turn off this video. Go YouTube primitive technology. Even that shit is smart. Irrigation. They've had irrigation for 100,000 years to bring water from 1,000 miles away. Right? They've had technology for a long time, since we've ever been here at our brain capacity. We've had language, we've had written language, we've had pictures, we've had all types of things that we have now. And some would argue even better back then than we have now. But they have destroyed everything. And they've held on to the information and the knowledge. And the only people that get the highest level of this occult information, this hidden information, is the top of the families. Just so it's passed on. You and I will never see that information. The top 1% won't see that information. The top 0.000000001% might have access to that information. The Pope doesn't have access to this shit. Donald Trump doesn't have access to this shit. You're going to have to go to the highest, like for example, we know that there's an archive of books below the Vatican. We know this. We have seen the archive. No one's allowed in there. Only the highest level elites are allowed in there. Putin's not allowed in there. Donald Trump's not allowed in there. The Pope isn't allowed in the basement of the Vatican. Not allowed. The Pope should give you clear indication there's people behind the scenes. people that are allowed to do things that you're not allowed to do. And I'm not jumping on the bandwagon of the Anunnaki or the fucking Martians or the reptilians or whoever. I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. What I am doing is jumping on the idea that we had information, we had technology, we had high levels of consciousness at one point. It was all destroyed to put certain families above other families, to make a hierarchy of people that literally can't be found out. And they put figureheads in specific spots to rule over you, under the guise of democracy, under the guise of religion, under the guise of whatever, to control the population. And they have completely went next level. They have completely taken control of the whole world. There's absolutely no one who can stop them. There's absolutely no one, not one person, that can stop them. Now there's this idea of, well, you know, you can't play chess without the pawns. And I would agree with that. We are the pawns. But once we decide not to be pawns anymore, all right, their little game is over. There's this meme I see on Facebook for the last like 10 years of a bunch of slaves holding up with their back a Monopoly board or a chess board or something.
Turn right on East 8th Street.
And the meme is, and there's a bunch of rich people, cigars and stuff, that are holding, or that are playing on the board, but they're slaves that are, you know, shirtless slaves that are sweating and their veins are popping out and they're stressed. And they're holding up this board with their backs. And the meme is, if you just stand up, their little game is over. But here's the thing. You don't think they've calculated that?
Turn left on South US
Even if you
Highway
figure it out, like
34.
me. Even if you figure it out. And I'm not even just conspiracy on this. This is pretty much fact that they have it so under wraps. They control every aspect of everything, in which you're just going to do what you're told. You're not going to convince anybody because everyone's living in the matrix. Everyone thinks that this is how you make money, this is how you're successful, don't worry about this, that, and the third, it's only going to harm you. They have the banking scheme, right? You go to jail if you don't pay taxes. So just that simple thing. You can't go fishing without a fishing license. There's such thing as treason. There's such thing as prison. There's such thing as a military. There's such thing as power. Notice that. Remember we used to, remember when Hillary Clinton was running for president the last term? Her nickname was Killary. She had so many crimes on her. And she's not even elite. She had a free pass. She ain't going to jail. What? She ain't going to prison. What? It's not even the higher ups. She's just used as a pawn to create more pawns. Donald Trump is a figurehead. When there's different countries, right? Now, for example, I believe that the New World Order took all the way over this whole fucking world and has control of this whole world for a long time. They have control over every country, every aspect. But why is there countries still, if they've already taken over the whole world? Why are they creating a wall between Mexico and America? Why? It's very simple. It's to disguise that there's people that rule the whole world. And they're going to have you do their bidding in other countries. Because, for example, Afghanistan's not going to just kill themselves. You're going to need somebody to come in there and kill them. It's not going to be themselves. It's going to be someone from another area. Why do you think that they always want racial division just in America? Why do you think they want that? Why do you think they promote that? Racial division in America is promoted. Why? To make sure that, hey, it's you versus me. That's why. And if we don't know who the real enemy is, and they disguise a different color skin as an enemy, what's going to happen? They can use you to go against them anytime they want. If you have that mentality, you're born in that mentality to be an obedient slave to racism, to another country, to whatever, right, is the bad guy. You're not going to wake up to their game. Every aspect has been calculated. You can't tell me one aspect that they've fucked up. They're even trying to control the internet right now, where people like me are getting shunned off the internet just because of these things that I'm doing right now, like philosophy. They've already done demonetized a lot of videos. They've taken videos off, and it's just videos. Right? It goes against the terms of service. Well, YouTube is Google. Google's bought and paid for by the government. Government's bought and paid for by the banks. The banks are bought and paid for by the elites. It's very simple once you figure it out. So, my idea is that they have created something perfect out of keeping you dumb and docile, destroying the literature, destroying the culture, destroying the ideas of the past, destroying the history of the past, making it not accessible to anybody else, so they fill in the void with fake history. That's what you're seeing nowadays. That's what you've seen for thousands of years. They don't want you to wake up. They want to hide information. This is why I talked about the occults and the secret societies. Well, go ahead and watch that video if you want to go in depth on different types of information on the occults and secret societies, in which would have access to this type of information, which is less than 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of the world that have this access to this information, or at least the groups that have access to this information. Alright, so I guess that's enough for this video. This video got way too long. I'll upload this, and I will see you in the next video. Stay tuned for more content. It's Opex, I'm out.